We often use the words sadness and depression almost like they're the same thing. Like depression is just a whole lot of sadness. But what if that's not true at all? What if they're completely different experiences with completely different functions in our lives? Okay, let's really get into this.
Right here, this is probably the most important idea we're going to talk about today. Sadness is an emotion, something that moves through you. It's an active thing. But depression, that's a state of being, something you feel stuck in. It's not about feeling a lot of something painful, it's about the feeling of being unable to feel much of anything at all.
So, to really understand this, we need to put them side by side. When you see them in direct contrast like this, it starts to break down one of the biggest and honestly most unhelpful myths about our mental health.
Think about sadness like a wave in the ocean. It swells up, it peaks, you feel it intensely, and then it recedes. It has a kind of rhythm to it. It's this fluid, natural process that flows through your body when you've lost something.
Now, compare that to depression. It's not a wave, it's more like a giant, heavy anchor. It feels completely static, paralyzing. It doesn't flow, it just holds you down. This is that feeling people talk about, like trying to walk through thick, heavy mud, where every single step takes a monumental effort. And this is absolutely crucial. Sadness, as painful as it is, actually pushes us to connect with other people. It's an emotion that makes you want to reach out, to talk about it, to be comforted. It's fundamentally looking for connection. Depression does the total opposite. It puts up walls. It creates this profound, deep sense of isolation, making you feel completely and utterly alone, even if you're in a room full of people who love you. It whispers in your ear that nobody gets it, and there's no point in even trying to explain. So let's just take a moment to look at sadness by itself. It's so important to get this. Sadness is not a problem that needs to be fixed. It's actually a healthy, vital part of being a human being. It's our emotional system working just the way it's supposed to. This really gets to the heart of it. Sadness is how our body and mind process loss. The loss of a person, sure, but also the loss of a job, a dream, a sense of who you thought you were. And even though it hurts, the system is still open. You can still feel, you can still cry, and you can still let the outside world in. Okay, and this brings us to the core idea of this whole explainer. If sadness is the system working properly, then depression is what happens when that system gets so overwhelmed that it has to pull the emergency brake. It's a radical, protective shutdown. I love this metaphor because it just feels so true. Just imagine your mind has been dealing with constant stress or grief or pressure for months, maybe even years, with no end in sight. It gets to a point where it literally cannot handle 1 ounce of pain. So to keep from shattering completely, it just shuts down. And this is what that shutdown actually feels like from the inside. See, it's not an overflow of sadness, it's the absence of feeling. It's the world turning from color to gray. It's that bone-deep emptiness, that fog where thoughts can't form, and that numbness where connection feels impossible. If you had to boil it all down to one single phrase for each experience, this would be it. Sadness is an invitation. It's asking for someone to share the feeling. But depression is a statement, a declaration of emotional bankruptcy. The system is offline. So how does someone even get here? It almost never happens overnight. It's usually the final act of a long, silent war to keep everything under control. It's the collapse of a very carefully built structure. And what's so fascinating and a little tragic is that depression often shows up in people we think of as the strong ones. The high achievers, the perfectionists, the people who are always taking care of everyone else but never asking for help themselves. They've spent a lifetime pushing down their own needs and emotions to keep going. Their capacity to just endure is massive, but it's not endless. And you can almost see the steps here. It starts with this chronic, relentless pressure. The only way to cope is with intense control. Just grit your teeth and push through. But you can only do that for so long. Eventually, the load just becomes too much, the system overloads, and the only thing left to do to protect itself is to shut it all down. So this is where we can start to see the whole experience differently. What if the shutdown isn't the real enemy here? What if it's actually a message, a profoundly important and honest message from their own self? And this is the message.
It's the body and the psyche finally saying, I'm done. I cannot do this anymore. No more pressure, no more pretending, no more perfectionism. The old way you were living, that structure you built to survive, it's just not working. Just let that sink in for a second. The intense suffering of trying to hold that impossible structure together, that's been going on for a long, long time. The depression isn't the start of the pain. It's the moment that old strategy of just pushing through finally runs out of fuel and comes to an end. And in that collapse, in that quiet, empty space, a kind of brutal honesty can emerge. Maybe for the first time, you can see with total clarity the impossible weight you were trying to carry. You can see how mean your inner critic was, how hard you were trying to be strong, and you realize that way of living was just never, ever sustainable.
And so we're left with this question. Not a question of blame, but one of gentle curiosity. It's an invitation to look back with compassion and just ask, what impossible standards was I trying to meet? What burdens did I pick up along the way that were never mine to carry in the first place? And recognizing that, well, that's not the end. That's very often the real beginning.